นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอปารุธาเดสังอมัตสทาวราเยโสรวันทาบมุญจันทุสัทธัง So I'm very touched by the reception here. I just thought we'd have a little birthday party together. But at my age, I'm really closer to death. Birth was 83 years ago. And so you feel, I mean, we could die at any time, after birth, but at this age you definitely feel closer. You're not going to get any younger. And there's no way of fooling yourself that you will. And of course, death is what we don't know. We're born already. We're experiencing consciousness within the form that was born so many years ago. And then, but we all know we'll die. That's a surety. And death is the result of being born, cause and effect. So this means like the sankhara. And in Thai they often refer to sankhara as the human body. Rup sankhan, gaya sankhan. And so it's the form that will cease in the next few years. It's called death. And people ask me, they say, what happens when you die? And I say, I don't know, you have to find out. And right now, we're experiencing consciousness within a form that was born. And it's like this. So, again, I reflect on this way of observing, this witnessing the way it is. And then in terms of physical death, that's in the future. And when what day, what year, how many more years left is unknown. And that you can know right now. This is like being aware of the way it is, that the physical death for myself is in the future, it's the unknown. But there's a knowing the unknown, the future is unknown. And that knowing is is the result of mindfulness and reflection on the way things are, on Dhamma. So birth, I don't remember being born, but my mother told me. She remembered. But she's dead now, so. But I do have a good memory still, and so I remember all kinds of things. And as you get older, I found so many memories from childhood, from early childhood, things that like the fashions of the 30s and 40s. I remember my mother wearing clothes like that, and seeing cars like that, and it brings up this kind of, nostalgia, which is a feeling of remembering a time of innocence, when one was a fairly innocent child. And so we have memory and remember the past. The present isn't a memory, it's like this, and so we remember in the past in the present. So the Buddha was always pointing to the way it is in the present, here and now, rather than how it was in the past. We get nostalgic, we get sentimental, or we get resentful, angry, upset by abuse, mistreatment of the past. Or we get very sentimental, thinking of childhood innocence and good, happy memories of the past. But memories arise in the present, and they're empty. They are what they are. They trigger off emotional reactions. So, and that we can feel in the present. But that which is aware in the present isn't a memory. Like consciousness isn't a memory, and it's not an emotion, but it's here and now. And as I've mentioned before, the true fact that everyone can verify is that each one of us is experiencing consciousness at this very moment. It's like this. And as you begin to let go of just the momentum of habits, emotions, and identity with the physical body and the forms that we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, think, and feel, what remains when we've let go of sankharas, of conditions, is consciousness, is peacefulness. So consciousness, its very nature, is peaceful. And so I was, and I tell this story of when I was a graduate student in Berkeley. I joined these peace movements. This was in the 1961, 62. And there was the American Friends Service Committee. I joined that in Berkeley. And then there was another one whose name I've forgotten. And we used to protest, the Atomic Energy Commission with signs saying peace. And during one of these protests, I was carrying a sign saying peace. I began to realize that I didn't know what I was talking about. Because I was demanding peace, but I wasn't peaceful. I was full of anger and righteous indignation, and this is not peaceful. And yet I'm demanding peace from American government or the Atomic Energy Commission or whatever. And it was like an insight. Suddenly you realize, that it's easy to want something you don't have, or expect it, or demand it from others. But with meditation, you begin to see what peace really is. Your true nature is peaceful. And all of us, because consciousness is not, it has no quality other than this kind of knowing. It's not discriminative. It's not saying what's right or wrong, good or bad. It's discerning. It knows the present is like this. The very fact that the knowing of consciousness, that you're conscious, is like this, is pure conscious knowing. But then we tend to see it, to interpret everything in terms of I know, or adding to this knowing, and claiming it is some kind of personal knowing or not knowing, identifying, adding to. And in Thai language, one of the words for sankhara is translated into Thai is prungdang, which means to season, to add to something, add to the present moment. So the thinking process, when you think about yourself, then you're creating something more than what is really here and now and conscious. And so the first fetter that we all need to examine is ego. Sakya Ditti, in Pali they call it Sakya Ditti, and that's this identity with the physical body, with the views and opinions, the conditioning sense of separate identity. I am this physical form. And all that goes along with identity with the form, whether it's white or black, male or female, or beautiful or not, or whatever. We create a sense of a self, an ego, Sakya Ditti. And this Sakya Ditti is called a fetter, which is which binds you to ignorance, because ignorance is not aware. Ignorance is habit patterns that we blindly attach to, cling to, identify with, without reflection, without investigation. So this sense of adding to, when you begin to, when I use this gesture of a kind of wide open acceptance or listening, it's like I'm conveying a sense of an attentiveness to the present moment rather than focused on an object or some kind of just thinking, cogitating habit patterns. It's a kind of poised attention, awaiting, alertness. It's very simple, like when you're waiting for something or listening for something. And being born and growing up in the Northwest, brought up when in Boy Scouts we had Indian, Native American stories that Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts we read, and we were quite moved by them, because this sense of the Indian brave standing there in the forest listening, poised on one foot, just like that. So that's an image that I've carried with me into monastic life, in this sense of poised attention. And listening here, not searching for sounds external, like I'm like the Indian brave is listening for a deer or something. But I'm not listening for that. It's just this sense of attentive, poised attention. And it's peaceful to be in that state. Nature is peaceful. And if I claim it as some kind of personal achievement, then that's the adding to it, making it something more than what it is. So if I say I'm really very mindful, then I'm making up, I'm claiming something that has no owner, but is natural and here and now, and impersonal and peaceful. So it's beginning to recognize that, to appreciate that. So when we talk about Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and these are the traditional Pali refuges, over the years, as I became, I began to use these, because in monastic life we do this chanting all the time, and we have monastic reflections that they're ways of investigating reality that are part of the morning and evening pujas in Thai forest monasteries. And over the years, you think, Bhutang Saranang Gacchami, It's part of a tradition, Thai Pali tradition, and it becomes ceremony. But with Luang Por Cha, the mantra he encouraged us to use was Bhutto, which is the name of the Buddha. And suddenly, you realize that attentive, poised, listening reality of here and now is Bhutto, it's knowing. It's like this. It's not judging, it's not saying that this is good or bad or happy or sad. It's like this. And so you take refuge in this, in Bhutang Saranam Gacchami. It can be a ceremonial chant, which is fine, but it's much more profound than that. And so you call this internalizing Bhutto or Bhutang Saranam Gacchami. You're not just saying the word, chanting it in the Pali language as a ceremony, but actually it reminds you of this state, this natural state of being. And then Dhammo, or Dhammang Saranam Gacchami, take refuge in Dhamma, in the reality of now. And Dhamma is it's an interesting word, because when you try to translate Dhamma into English, it's the best word I can think of is reality. Awaken to reality. Awaken to the way it is. And then you say, well, tell me what the way it is. And then I started trying to explain something that isn't going to help you. It's making you start thinking and doubting whether I know what I'm talking about or not. Or we can get into arguments about Dhamma. Buddhist monks do this, about what Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha really mean, and what is Sangha and Dhamma, and you can form opinions and views. But it's much more profound than any intelligent opinion or view. It's here and now. And as consciousness, Dhamma, are they any different? Or are they separate? Is Dhamma some kind of special mystical force in the universe? Some kind of marvelous energy that we can't really imagine. And so you can make it into some kind of highly mystical, abstract idea. But that's not Dhamma. So this awakening to reality, to Dhamma, is conscious knowing. It's like this. All conditions are impermanent. Sape sankhara anicca. Sape dhamma anatta. These are the two sentences that we reflect on all the time. Sape sankhara anicca is a simple, all conditions are impermanent. So what do you mean by conditions? People ask me, because that's a word that could be interpreted in all kinds of ways. And in Pali, the word they use is sankhara, sape sankhara, all conditions, or phenomena, all conditions. It's everything. It's the bodies, our sankharas, our conditions, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, the sensual organs, the sense organs, the objects. Consciousness through sensory, through the senses is conditions. But when you let go of conditions, when there's the letting go, non-attachment to any condition, then there's pure consciousness. It's called the empty consciousness. And that's what Nirodha is in the Third Noble Truth. It's when we realize, we know in this direct way, the end of suffering or the absence of suffering. So the Buddha, this is taking the suffering as a noble truth to non-suffering, Nirodha and samadhi or right understanding, perfect understanding. So this simple formula of the Four Noble Truths to me is provable, it's practical, it's usable, and I highly recommend it. Because I was, my nature as a personality was a skeptical mind. I was brought up in a Christian family, Episcopalian family in Seattle. And my parents, my sister, they believed everything that the priest told them. And I didn't. So what are you going to do? You try to fit in, at least I did. At one time I was even asked the bishop in Seattle to become a postulant, to become a priest. And I was so desperate to hold on to Christianity. But the more that I tried to believe something, the more cynical I became, the more I doubted. And because this wanting to believe was, out of fear, and what I was supposed to do, what my family wanted me to do, and yet the very nature of my own personal tendencies was to doubt. And so then people ask me why I became a Buddhist, because you don't have to believe in things. And so the Four Noble Truths, like the First Noble Truth, you don't have to believe that. You just observe it. If I said you have to believe in suffering, you don't have to believe it, you just observe it. So this is why one respects the Buddha's wisdom in his first sermon, because taking this as a noble truth, because it is something. What's noble about suffering is that we all experience it, and now the noble truth of suffering is to change your attitude from running away, blaming it on others, or seeking happiness endlessly, or distractions away from suffering or unhappiness, to understanding it. To understand suffering, you need to accept it. To understand something, you can't just react to it by running away or blaming it on somebody else. You need to, it's like this feeling of fear or anger, resentment, or doubt or worry, from extreme to just self-consciousness or timidity or worry, is like this. Confusion. I used to hate feeling confused. I wanted to have, I used to get confused, and then I'd struggle with it, trying to get clarity, trying to get the answer to the question or the solution to the problem. And then suddenly the confusion is like this. Rather than just fighting and trying to struggle with not knowing or confusion or doubt. Only the simplicity of doubting, uncertainty, insecurity, confusion is like this. And there's this acceptance of it. It's you're no longer trying to get rid of it, or figure how to, get intimidated by it, but it is what it is. And that's sati sampajanya, that's mindfulness and intuitive awareness, clear comprehension. So you're not playing games with your mind, you're not trying to convince yourself it's something it isn't, or believe that it's somebody's fault, but it is this way, feeling confused or worried, anxious, dread the future, anxiety, resentment. In anyone's life, there's a lot to resent. And as you grow up, you aren't always treated and appreciated the way you should be. And so, you find out, that we harbor a lot of resentment and anger over things of the past. Then we try to figure out how to deal with it. We start analyzing, why do I get angry? Why do I get upset over this? And you don't need to know why. Because anger or resentment or confusion is like this. And then this attitude of patience with it, allowing it to be this way, it ceases. And as you cultivate this patient endurance with the dukkha, with the suffering, you see the end of suffering, which is the third noble truth. And the end of suffering doesn't mean you drop dead, or it means it's just empty peace, conscious awareness. And it recognizes itself. It's not stupid, it's wise, where wisdom operates, universal wisdom. So over the years, I've developed a lot of techniques dealing with emptiness, with consciousness, with space, because it's always fascinated me. When you try to figure out, when they talk about Nibbana in Theravada, what is Nibbana? And then they describe it as the highest happiness. So it takes on a quality of high, something precious. and Buddhists that interfaith conferences oftentimes say, Christians have heaven, but we have Nibbana, it's higher than heaven. So it's kind of one-upmanship. The Buddhist Nibbana is better than the Christian heaven. But that makes no sense, It's not about highest happiness, because it is the highest happiness actually, but it's not high, it's natural happiness. It's contentment, it's ease. It's not being high like you blissed out on drugs or something. So, they use the word nirvana a lot for what is absolutely blissful and fantastic. But in the terminology itself has no real definition. It's an enigmatic word. And you can't define Nibbana, but you can realize Nibbana. You can realize empty consciousness. It's real, it's reality, it's knowing through this sati sampajanya, satipanya, mindfulness and intuitive awareness, wisdom. In the investigation of Dhamma, you've got 10 fetters and that block off Nibbana, or the enlightenment, awakening to reality. And the first three fetters are man-made fetters, human-made fetters. They aren't natural conditions according to the species. They're made up like the sakyaditi, the ego. You aren't born with an ego. Like a newborn baby doesn't have an ego, and it doesn't have a cultural identity, doesn't have a language that it thinks in, but it has physical form, the human form, it's conscious, it's sensitive, it has eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, mind, but it hasn't formed a sense of its separateness as a separate person, personality, or as a member of any, racial identity, gender identity, religious identity. You acquire that after you're born. And then, so the first fetter is this sakyaditi, which is the identity with the body. And then the second one is the is a pretty tongue twister word, silapata paramasa, which none of you will remember, but it means a cultural conditioning, social conditioning, religious conditioning. It doesn't necessarily mean ego, but it's the kind of input you get from being born into the family that you're born into, and their beliefs and attitudes and ideas. You accumulate a sense of belonging to this group, to this social group, this class, this ethnic group, whatever. And then the third fetter is called vicikicca, which means doubt. And if you explore doubt, it's thinking. To doubt, you have to think. So when we attach to thinking, we end up with never being quite sure. It could be, could not be, might be, maybe, possibly. And then we could think of other alternatives, other explanations. So, in this exploration of the first three fetters, because these are the ones that block the insight into the path, into the Dhamma, the reality of Dhamma. Because they're human-made, they're made out of human ignorance. So they're very, just exploring that, the sakyaditi, the sense of separate self. I'm, this physical form. I'm an American. I'm a man. I'm a white man. I'm an Episcopalian or whatever. And then you start, it's all created, this sense of being better or worse, or, because we compare ourselves with others as we develop, other children or ideals that we have. So we create a sense of separateness and self-worth at an early age. And then the social identities are very strong. And then the thinking mind. So we're educated, aren't we? And modern education is all about reading and writing and thinking and promoting the sense of a self. Like the sense of a self is being, in my generation, was very much to be able to be independent and self-assertive, be strong and brave. And these were the ideals held up, for what men are supposed to become: strong and brave and confident and self-assertive. And then when you don't feel brave and self-assertive, what happens? You start criticizing yourself. You start thinking of yourself in negative terms, comparing yourself with ideals of what should be, what you'd like to be, role models and that, and then the reality of here and now. If a man's supposed to be brave, when you're frightened, what is this? It's something you shouldn't feel. So you feel weak or cowardly or insufficient. And the ego forms, the whole sense of your self-worth, your abilities or lack of them, your sense of, trying to compete, to compare, is very much part of the thinking process. Because thinking is about good, better, best, bad, worse, worst. This is better than that. This is what thinking does. It compares, this is big and that's small. So the function of thinking is for sankharas, for conditioned phenomena. If it's red or blue or green, and these are qualities, other conditions that we name. We have names for them. We have preferences. So to realize the function of the thinking process, its purpose is to discriminate and to define and to make judgments, value judgments about what is right, what is wrong, and what's worthwhile and what isn't. So that's why the thinking process cannot be trusted. Whatever you think you are, don't believe it. It is what it is, but it's not you. It's the created sense of self. So one of my books that's currently popular, that was published by some friends in England, called Don't Take Your Life Personally. People really like this book. Because it is a helpful reflection, because we do take our lives personally. Everything is personal and we're judging in terms of what should or shouldn't be right and wrong, good or bad. But awareness isn't about right and wrong, good or bad, or personality. It's like this, seeing that this sense realm, this realm that we're experiencing here and now, through this form, through the physical form with its senses operating, is like this. This is a state of sensitivity and awareness of sensitivity. Awareness, conscious awareness, awakened consciousness, aware that feeling is like this, feeling happy is like this, feeling angry is like this. That awareness isn't angry or happy. It doesn't. Those words aren't about conscious awareness. But you're aware. You can have moods where you feel angry, upset, anxious, or frightened, or happy, or elated. But these are conditions. They're sankharas that arise and cease. So it's this kind of awakened to reality. In Singapore, recently, a group formed called the Buddha Dhamma Foundation, and they asked me to give a kind of motto to their group. So I gave them, awaken to reality. And so I like the word reality in terms of Dhamma, because reality is to be known for itself, not judged according to personal preferences or conditioning. Now this is, at the time, here in the United States, it's like this, in terms of the present government and the economy. So notice when I say it's like this, I'm not making a judgment. is that whatever you're feeling right now about the state of the United States is like this. And you can know that, right? It's like this. And you know how you're feeling. I'm not telling you what you should feel. And so it's a very simple, imminent kind of reality that you're recognizing that can be overlooked for your own personal preferences and criticisms and attitudes about the present state of America. But it's a good thing to practice accordingly, to begin to be aware that what you feel is the way it is, but it's not about ultimate reality. It's not Dhamma, it's sankhara, and it is the way it is. And the more you cultivate this path, the stronger this emptiness is. It's because it's natural. It's not you're not creating some kind of special concentrated state. It's not created. It's more like a relinquishing of sankharas. The letting go leads to to Dhamma, to nature, to reality itself. So it's not like you don't acquire something, you just let go of everything. Where desire is about acquiring something, so that which is aware of desire, the second noble truth is about desire, getting to know the nature of desire. And sometimes, like, for example, at first I interpreted Buddhist teachings as you must get rid of your desires. If you're a bhikkhu, you're a monk, you've got to get rid of desires. Because you're celibate, you've got to get rid of sexual desire, and you live a mendicant life, so you're supposed to be content. So you've got to get rid of discontentment, be happy with what is offered, and all kinds of ideals of having a compassionate nature, and you can create an ideal bhikkhu in your mind. At least I did, speaking for myself. I don't know if the other bhikkhus can relate to this, but but that's not what what Buddha was pointing to. It wasn't creating to a reconditioning into a Buddhist monk, some ideal Buddhist monk, but an awakening human individual to reality. So in our lives, desire, sexual desire is a natural function of the body. These are sexual forms. So they're sensitive forms. There's a natural energy that's instinctual, and then we create an identity with it. And we judge it according to being good or bad, clean or dirty, or what we elevated or we dismiss it. But in reflecting, we're aware of it. It is the way it is. In the celibate life, you refrain from acting on it, speaking on it. But you're certainly aware of it. It is what it is. Then anger and resentment and fear are kind of primal energies, that the mammalian world shares. So it's not culturally conditioned, it's not personal. When conditions arise, where they're thought to be frightened of in this realm. So you as an individual human form are very, quite vulnerable to all kinds of possibilities of pain and misery, humiliation. meteors falling on top of your head, or you can imagine anything. Aliens from outer space attacking the United States or something like that. You can create scenarios. But there is this universe. What can we know about it? In terms, it's so vast in the sankharas, the sun and moon and stars. How can we possibly know all about it? From this very sensitive form that we're experiencing. But we can know this much, that here and now is like this. So this is called Akalika Dhamma, Ehipasiko, come and see. It's like when we say Ehipasiko Dhamma, come and, no, it's right here and now. It's not something you have to search for, but just awaken to. So these first three fetters, as long as we operate from Sakya Ditti, from the ego, when we don't investigate, we don't get to the cause of suffering, then even if how good we are and how virtuous we might become, we may never see the path, because it's not a matter of getting something, but of investigating, looking, relinquishing, letting go. That term, letting go, can also be misunderstood in terms of getting rid of. But letting go is like you're holding something like this cloth, and you're tense, you're grasping it, and the Buddha says, let go. Now this cloth can be useful, but I can let go of it. So I just put it down. So letting go is more like that, rather than throwing it out and destroying it. So it's a relaxed state of attentiveness, and it's where contentment operates. Like the monastic form, this particular style of life leads to contentment. The aim is not through trying to become content as a person, not through trying to make yourself into a content monk, but it's about seeing the suffering of discontentment, seeing the misery you can create out of this life, out of wanting something you don't have, or wanting to get rid of things you have you don't want. And just operating from the desire, ignorance and desire, then there's no way you can ever be content. So, like the alms mendicant life, it's based on this sense of relinquishment, of letting go. So, I wish everybody that you may every single one of you be content.